Hi, Andrea again with another episode of Beats by Britain. I haven't uploaded anything for a while because I've been focusing more on lessons and performing than anything else. But I wanted to cover some new used equipment that I've acquired since I last uploaded anything. Particularly in light of the fact that Logic Pro 11 has changed a little bit about how we use external MIDI gear. But I wanted to cover an interesting piece of equipment that's old, but I just dearly love it. It's my Boss DR880 drum machine. And the things I'm going to talk about are going to cover how to set up any drum machine to use in Logic. Okay? So yeah, I just recently got this, and the only problem with it is the backlight here doesn't work. So I've got extra lamps and stuff set up. My lighting is set up a little bit differently in my studio, so I'm sorry there are shadows here that I can't do anything about. So anyway, this covers how to set up a drum machine eventually for use in Logic. And I prefer a drum machine, or actually playing drums myself, because when I'm working in Logic, the style of music that I work in Logic Pro Drummer, the drummer session player, doesn't lend itself very well to Americana or jazz or classical even. So, like I said, it just, I find myself tweaking Logic Pro Drummer or any of the session players in Logic so much that it just takes up way too much of my time. So, I have largely abandoned Logic Drummer in favor of this drum machine and my new Roland drum kit, which I'll cover in a later video coming up pretty soon. And one of the things that I use my drum machine for is not just for sequencing in Logic, but I also use it as the metronome, because I don't like the metronome in Logic. I know you can set it to play different drum kit pieces and all that, but you know what? I just find it more fun. It's actually easier for me to record in time with the correct tempo and do everything the way I want it to happen if I use a drum machine and not the metronome. So anyway, that was my whole reason for going with a drum machine, and this was the best purchase I could have made ever, really, for that purpose. So, when you first turn your drum machine on, first of all, you want to make sure you want to look to see if the backlight works on the menu. It makes using this a whole lot easier. But anyway, when you get your drum machine, you're gonna hook it up with. Sorry for my arm here, but you're gonna have left and right audio outs, and you want to make sure and hook those up to your interface or your computer. In my case, I'm using a Scarlett interface. So you got your audio in and outs. You want to hook those up. There's a bunch more jacks on the back of this. Like I can hook up a foot pedal. I can hook up additional pads and all that kind of thing. But I can't really turn this around and have it still be visible on the camera. So anyway, you want your left and right audio outputs plugged in. It also has MIDI in and out, the old school MIDI 5-pin DIN input and output on the back of this, and it has USB. I could use the MIDI. There are some advantages to using the old school MIDI cables, but I've run out of places to connect them to, so on my interface. So I don't use them. I just use the USB. And there's the USB right there. Okay, so you want to make sure and set up your connections. Once your connections are made, and you really don't even need the computer on for this part of it. But once your connections are made, you're going to turn the drum machine on. and it's going to default to a pattern of some type. So turn it on, hit play, make sure it works, and it does. Okay, you have to get into the MIDI functions. So when you turn it on, it's going to start with the default pattern. It doesn't make any difference what pattern shows up here. You're going to hit edit. And you're going to arrow over whatever it defaults to, you're going to arrow over to the MIDI settings. And this is how I do it on the Boss DR880, but you need to adjust the MIDI settings on any drum machine. So we hit enter. And it's on MIDI settings again. You can do a bulk receive or a bulk dump if you have, if you've already done what they call a sysx save, like a sysx dump from this machine to your computer, and you want to restore this drum machine. You can do a bulk receive and get all your settings back from the computer. But anyway, that's what these two things are for. It's for the bulk dump and the bulk receive. We're going to go to MIDI settings. We're going to hit enter. And this is the screen that's really important. You want to make sure that your drum channel is set to channel 10. It's set to receive and transmit over channel 10. And the reason for that is because any other MIDI gear uses channel 10 is pretty much reserved for drums. All the other MIDI channels 1 through 9 and 11 through 16 can be used for anything. Well, all 16 MIDI channels can be used for any MIDI gear. But I don't want to turn my drum machine on and have it playing piano or guitar or anything else. So I've got all my MIDI gear set up to send and receive over their own unique channels, and the drum machine is set up to send and receive over channel 10. That way I will never get anything other than drum sounds on this. Okay. Now the Boss DR880 is a little bit, it was top of the line for its time, and it's one of the few drum machines that will also sequence bass. I don't do that. I don't even mess with the bass, but that's what this is for. So if I wanted to sequence bass guitar, I could do that. You want it set to receive MIDI volume from your computer. That's going to default to off. You want to change that to on. So it's going to default to off. Change it to on. Sync mode is going to default to internal, and that's true with any drum machine. Sync mode is going to default to that. If you leave it at internal, it's never going to sync with Logic or Pro Tools. So it will sync with other MIDI gear, but not with Logic or Pro Tools, and that's what we want. So we're going to change the sync mode to auto. Let me explain the different modes here. Internal means that it will sync with other MIDI gear. Like if I've got this just cabled to my Korg keyboard, okay? It will sync with the Korg keyboard, but it won't sync with anything else, all right? If I set it to MIDI, this will sync with Logic, but that's all it'll sync with Logic or Pro Tools, but that's all it will do. If I'm not running Logic or Pro Tools, it doesn't play, okay? It won't do anything. So I want to be able to use this drum machine with the computer on or off. So I change it to auto, and that way it doesn't make any difference if I've got the computer on or off. It'll work the way I want it to work. Okay, device ID doesn't really matter. In my case anyway. I'm not even sure what that's for. So I've got it set up the way I want. Hit exit, let it write, and then exit back to the pattern. And this is a pattern that I like to use. As I said, I like to use my drum machine as a metronome in Logic. And when I'm working on jazz tunes, I might not necessarily save this as a drum pattern in Logic, but I do like to use it as a metronome. It's fun to play along with. Okay, and so anyway, that's how you set up drum machines before you even go into Logic. This is how you set them up. This is the first step. There's going to be about 3 steps, but this is the first step before you even turn your computer on. Okay, so stay tuned for the next step.